I am obsessed with superheroes. Not the Marvel movie comic kind, but everyday human connection superheroes. Now, in the analog days, it was really easy to come into contact with these people. This was like the lady at the DVD store who, if you told her you were really, really sick and you couldn't return your DVDs on time, she'd waive your fine. Or when you were a little kid and you went to the food court or the hawker center and you were $1 short for your lunch, the old uncle who would waive that for you, give you $1 off because he saw you use your money to buy sweets from the stall next door. We do so much of our lives online now that we interface less and less with these everyday human connection superheroes. And it's a real shame because we also get to learn from them less as well. But if you are really obsessed like me, and really, really lucky, one monsoonal, rainy Friday evening, 6 p.m. peak hour in the Central Business District, you may bump into one. Now, we all know what the CBD is like 6 p.m. on a Friday, even worse when it rains. It is the second coming of Armageddon. And you just can't get a cab in there because taxi drivers don't want to go in and get stuck in the gridlock. So if you are lucky enough to get a cab like me to take you into your live radio show, which you cannot be late for, you better be waiting where you told the cabbie you would be. Now, I happened to come out of a meeting and be in a place where if I wasn't waiting right at that point, the taxi driver couldn't wait. We've all been in that position, right? But because I was distracted by the very apps and devices born to connect us but are disconnecting us, my mobile phone, I missed the pickup. The taxi driver had to go all the way around the entire block to come and get me. And while he's doing this loop, I'm stressed out, I'm sick, I've got to go in for live radio. I'm thinking, you are going to get scolded by your taxi driver. Who here has been scolded by their taxi driver before? Oh, it is such a special Singaporean experience. So the driver comes around and I get in, and as if I had committed murder, I'm like, Uncle, I am so sorry. Silence. And then Uncle Arthur, as I now know to be his name, says, girl, it's okay. We must be compassionate during peak hour. We must be safe on the roads when it is wet. And I knew in that moment that I was in the presence of a human connection superhero. Over the next 20 minutes, Uncle and Arthur and I bonded over everything we love, his most interesting customers, compassion, empathy, human connection. And by the time the taxi rocked up at the radio studio, this happened.
Introduce you guys to Uncle Arthur. Hi, Uncle Arthur.
Hi.
Uncle Arthur is legitimately the most polite, the most positive, the most spiritual taxi driver in all of Singapore. He should be made the ambassador of the kindness campaign. You should be the new courtesy lion.
Oh, you make me cry.
He's going to cry. He says he's going to cry. Thank you for being joyful during peak hour. Yeah? Oh, Uncle Arthur, don't cry. I'm going to give him a shout out tonight on air, and if any of you are lucky enough to get Uncle Arthur, you're truly blessed. Do you want to tell anything to the world?
Love and forgive.
Amazing.
Now, Uncle Arthur is amazing. We now follow each other on Instagram. He puts a lot of videos from his church up there every Sunday. He is awesome. But seriously, how did we go from being complete strangers to crying out of joy with each other 20 minutes later? What human connection superpowers did Uncle Arthur use on me that made us bond like that? And so there are a couple things happening here. Firstly, Uncle Arthur waited and observed me. He listened before he spoke. So he would have heard that I don't have the quintessential Singaporean accent. And so he neutralized his own accent so I could understand him better. And I, subconsciously, when I'm with my Singaporean family and friends, augment my accent to be better understood. We were both trying to neutralize, to expedite connection, to pull us closer like magnets. But it wasn't just how we were talking to each other, it was what we chose to talk about. Now, it's pretty clear there are Australian parts of me. But I did not choose to talk to Uncle Arthur about the latest Australian reality show on TV. He wouldn't have known that. It would have made him completely excluded. It would have disconnected that magnetism we were trying to build. So instead, I chose to speak to Uncle Arthur about Courtesy Lion, the mascot of a kindness campaign or a service campaign that was started in the early 80s here in Singapore to improve service standards, and probably designed to create the exact scenario that happened with me and Uncle Arthur, so they did well. So this is what I want you to remember. If you're trying to connect with someone very quickly, commonality connects. With your accent, with the subject matter, commonality connects. So how did my obsession with superheroes start? Okay, 2 years ago in my former life as a radio DJ, I had to do a contest giveaway on air, giving away tickets to see a superhero movie. I think it was Wonder Woman. And I asked listeners to WhatsApp voice note into the station if they could have any superhero power in the world, what would it be and why? And I got all of the answers that you would predict. One guy wanted to be invisible so he could spy on people. Wonder what he would do with that. Another woman wanted to be able to read people's minds, so she always knew what people would be thinking of her. But it was this last voice note that I got that completely stopped me in my tracks, changed the course of my life. And it's not just what this young Singaporean girl, Mei Xuen, is saying. I want you to listen to how she's saying it. The complete thirst, the yearning in her voice.
Hi, I'm Mei Xuan, and one superpower that I'd like to have is to be able to relate to people. It's not an extraordinary superpower, but I just feel like in modern day, everyone's kind of cold to one another. I really just want to be able to connect to another person, one-on-one. Yeah.
You can hear that self-consciousness in her voice, right? A little bit of sprinkling of shame as well. And it just plagued me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I thought, what are we doing that's making us feel so disconnected? And I did some research and I realized, this planet is living in a human connection crisis. And then I went further. I started thinking, Simone, how can you do human connection better? And then I thought, who can I study who can teach us all the good things we need to know about human connection? And today I can share with you just a sliver, but I hope that that sliver is enough that we can all start to earn our superhero capes. So before this 2-year research project began, I was like most people. I was very good at connecting organically and authentically with people I naturally got along with. It was easy. But when it came to people that maybe I felt their viewpoint was so disparate from mine, I couldn't really see the commonality to connect with, it seemed like really hard work. Who's felt like that? Sometimes it's just hard work, human connection. I had a boss at the time that for the life of me I couldn't connect with. The thought of having to start a connection was like biting and trying to eat a hard stone. And then something happened in my personal life to completely flip my mindset on this. You see, what if the person that you're supposed to have the best connection with in the whole world, the person who's supposed to know you best, the person that gave birth to you, can't connect with you? My mother has a rare degenerative disease. It's literally causing parts of tissue in her brain to break off. So there are holes in her memory. 3 years ago, she forgot the days of the week and the times of the day. 2 years ago, she forgot that my father died of cancer in 2004. And they say eventually she could forget who I am. And so when I got this news a year ago, I did what any logical person in the media industry would do. I started paparazziing my mother. And I did this because back in 2004, when my father passed away of cancer, we didn't have smartphones, so I don't have video of him. Anybody in this room who's experienced profound human loss will understand that photos only give us so much after years go by. Soon we forget mannerisms, we forget tone of voice. I've forgotten my dad's smile. And I was not allowing that to happen to me a second time. So here's a video that I made with my mum last year after I'd gotten that news in the nursing home. And I want you to watch for that moment when disconnection becomes connection. You saw that moment, right? You saw that moment. In that moment, I went from this random crazy girl dancing with her to her remembering everything about taking me or forcing me to go to Chinese school on Saturdays, teaching me how to sew, giving birth to me. In that moment, Mummy Heng was back. So what is this an analogy for in how we do human connection in our own lives with people that we don't organically, easily connect with? Well, if there is a connection, whether it be with a colleague or family member that you need to make, and you know that it's going to completely change the quality of your life and theirs, I want you to stand there and I want you to go all out, even if your heart is breaking, because when you persist, it's hard to resist. So by now you realize my mum is a really big part of my life. She's the OG of human connection. I realized by being her daughter, I haven't been studying this for 2 years and researching this for 2 years. I've been observing human connection for my entire life. And this is how I know that my mother is the original human connection superhero. In 2015, when I first moved back to Singapore and I became this sort of public figure of sorts, my social media and my emails were inundated by messages from my mother's former students at RGS. And my mum taught there 40 years ago. So her students are now CFOs, ministers, community leaders. They are busy women. But upon me replying back to them and giving my mum's details, these women took annual leave from their high-powered jobs and flew 4,000 kilometers to sit next to my mother in that nursing home. I mean, I don't know about you, but I barely remember my secondary school teachers' names, let alone would I take my holiday to go and do that. So what human connection superpowers did my mother employ to make these girls feel so bonded to her all these decades later? And I got the answer to this in a speech that I had to prepare for International Women's Day, and I wanted to feature powerful Singaporean women. So I rang my mum, and she's sitting there in her wheelchair, and she's clutching the phone with the remaining good hand that she has. And I said, Mama, what was the name of your student who's now the CFO of DBS Bank? And my mother paused, and she said, Simone, I'm so proud of them. And I was like, Mummy, I'm glad you're proud, but I need names for this speech. So what about the woman who was an engineer on the MRT, the mass rapid transit system here in Singapore? And Mummy Heng, again, this time paused for a little bit longer. And she said, Simone, I'm just so proud of them. And I'm getting sassy because we get sassy at our parents. So I was like, I'm glad you're proud, lady. But I need names for the speech. What about the lady who is a member of Mensa and a surgeon? And this time my mother paused for an inordinate amount of time until I realized that she was ashamed because she could not remember their names. She said, Simone, I am just so proud of them. And that's when I realized that this story has two massive takeaways about authentic human connection. Firstly, and if you're a young Singaporean kid watching this, I really want you to listen to me. Firstly, the details of your achievements, what school you went to, what job title you had, how much money you earned, when it comes to human connection, that stuff is irrelevant. What matters is how you made people feel. My mother's pride for those girls set her on fire. That pride trickled down through her, it inspired her, and that inspiration is what raised me. In fact, growing up, I was regaled with so many stories about these students, I actually thought they were the ghosts of daughters she gave birth to before I was born. The second major takeaway about human connection from this story is, once you've done the things that I've mentioned, the commonality connects, when you persist, it's hard to resist, and a lot of the other things that I've found in the research, is what you have is a beautiful, authentic human relationship. And here's how you spot an authentic human relationship, okay? It's reciprocal. It's a two-way street. Just the same way my mother found teaching those girls an unforgettable experience and she was forever changed by it, those girls were forever changed by the experience of being taught by her. So much so that it would compel them to fly 4,000 kilometers to that nursing home decades later. So you see, the more about human connection I research, the more I completely empathize with Mei Xuan's yearning in that voice note. Because see, your human connections are actually what defines your happiness right now. From your interactions with your husband or your wife, all the way to perfect strangers you meet through the day like Uncle Arthur. Your human connections also define how you'll be remembered on this planet. They're your legacy, just like my mum with her students. So when you think about it, your human connections define your life. So why don't we all aim to do it better? Thank you.